I'm gonna do something a little different this time and review both episodes 6 and 7, so the whole mid-season finale at the same time, and we'll see how it goes. Cinder's backstory in this episode ranges between mildly and incredibly lame. Let me talk about the good stuff first, though, before I inevitably trash this thing. The good part about Cinder's backstory is that it finally happened after way too long. Maybe this was a good time. I think the timing was off. I think if they put this like last volume and then you get to see like how Salem and Cinder's relationship plays out in this volume a little more, it would have felt better. But the fact that they put it here kind of messes with the pacing of the season, at least in my opinion. If they showed her backstory like right after she didn't get the Maiden's powers, the Winter Maiden's powers, and just had to run back to Salem, like I think that would have been a perfect low moment to show why she is the way she is and why she's so concerned with doing things her way. But it was good that it happened. And another good thing about this is it's good representation for abuse in media. You can see the full circle of Cinder saying, "Without you, I am nothing." The very edgy thing to say, by the way. I don't know how old she is now. I'm sure she's no longer an adolescent, but she is still an adolescent. You cannot be an adult person and say to another adult person, "Without you, I am nothing." I get, there's the whole, like, she's enslaved to Salem and all that. All, whatever. But just as a human being, imagine saying that. Imagine saying to somebody, "Without you, I am nothing." Even Salem in that situation is like, all right, like, chill, bitch. Like, this is a work relationship. You need to back up and like reevaluate. Maybe we should spend some time apart. You can go intern at Lionheart's office if you want for a while. It's empty for sure. I really hope their relationship goes in that direction where Salem just lets Cinder like do whatever she wants because she's like, "Oh no, I don't want to deal with her. She's really creepy. I don't want. She's so clingy. Ugh. I'm trying to rule the world by myself, right? Like you all. Don't." Oscar's gonna say this to you, and don't believe him, but he might be right. But you're all gonna die, and then it's gonna be just me, and then hopefully I'll die, and I'll never see you guys in the afterlife. Anyways, back to abuse. I like that you can see the cycle of abuse playing out, and this is a point that's been made, but it's worth reiterating. The cycle of abuse is great here. I love seeing cycles of abuse in media. It's besides that being a terrible thing to say, it's good for showing how like abuse obviously isn't the victim's fault, but then you can become the perpetrator in the long run. And Emerald's already a victim to that, and she's been for a while now. Let's talk about how the Cinder backstory is kind of lame now. Kind of lame because, it uses the fairy tale coding and like veneer, but it doesn't have any real substance underneath that. Like it's trying too hard to be a fairy tale, but most fairy tales have like a lesson at the end of it. Not modern Cinderella, I guess. I don't know what the lesson of modern Cinderella is. Make sure your foot is a size that's common and small, I guess. But the old one was, I don't even know what happened in the Grimm tale, the Brothers Grimm tale of Cinderella. Can any post it in the comments if you find it, because I'm not Googling that. Last time I checked, the aunt, and I don't know what they're called, the stepsisters that she had, they got their eyes poked out by like pigeons or whatever. And I guess, she ran out of aura, so it actually hurt her. I don't know how fairy tales work. The point I'm making on Kinda Lame is that it uses the fairy tale coding, but it doesn't do anything with it. So it ends up being just a story about like 5 or 6 shallow characters who fit into archetypes, and then that's it. So take Prince Guy, the guy who trains her. What is his purpose? I don't understand I don't know what his motivation is. I don't know why he chose to, I was going to say hook up, why he chose to train Cinder. I don't know why he's coming late at night. I don't know why he keeps coming to that same hotel. Does he live there? I thought he could travel the world. He has enough time to travel the world and make it back at midnight to train some girl he just met. If I were a 10-year-old girl, and this goes without saying, but if I were a 10-year-old girl and a 40-something, 30-something-year-old guy wanted to teach me late at night, anyways, the lack of character for these characters is really telling because I just can't understand why these dynamics exist in the way that they do. They're all working class people. The huntsman is a huntsman. Like maybe he's a little better off, whatever, he gets to do what he wants. But Cinder, the mean MILF lady, and her daughters, future MILFs, all live pretty shit lives, right? 'Cause they work in a hotel for people who don't like them, shown here, but they're still prancing around and eating strawberries. like they're in a yogurt commercial. They do back-breaking labor and are theoretically, I mean, given how society works in general, like not treated that well. And they still have time to be assholes off the clock, which I guess, that's just, having a job in general. I know what that's like. But, I mean, come on. The core problem here, and this is where we get to how it's incredibly lame, Cinder's backstory, is there is a core motivation behind Cinder's character. There's a core idea that thrusts her forward, and that's her gaining the ability to do what she wants, how she wants, essentially. Like gaining freedom, that's really what it means, not being shackled to people. Problem with having such an explicit idea behind Cinder's character and then not executing on it in her backstory, the problem there is that like it makes the character make less sense in a way, and we kind of have to extrapolate why she is the way she is. And let me explain this point. Cinder says that Hunter Guy, does he have a name? Does anybody have a name in this story? Hunter Guy can do whatever he wants, whenever he wants, and it's cool or whatever. I don't know what exactly she was trying to say. The thing though is that like she's never shown, I think what would have helped this story a lot more is if they showed that Cinder saw some meaningful contrast to her own life in like a Prince and the Pauper kind of way, where I don't know if any of you read The Prince and the Pauper or saw it or anything like that, but these two kids that look identical like swap places or whatever. It's like a Freaky Friday but for classism. But the point of that story is showing that both sides of the coin, or both the Prince and the Pauper, saw the value in each other's lifestyles because they lacked it. The problem with Cinder here, and it's more of a preference thing, I don't want to say it's like a problem, but I just see it as a weaker part of the story, is she doesn't get to see a meaningful contrast in the sense that she doesn't get to see like how someone with freedom lives, because the only free person she sees is a guy who comes to the same hotel every night looking for 10-year-olds. So like a 10-second sequence of her seeing people getting on a ship to go on an adventure, or like a group of huntsmen and huntresses like walking down the street talking about their adventures or whatever, something like that, I think would have been better for showing that Cinder has a meaningful idea of what's out there and she wants to like go get it for herself or go see it for herself. But as it is, we're supposed to almost infer the desires that Cinder, or infer how she got to get the desires that she had, because somebody in that position could have come up with any number of reactions to their abuse and all that, and it would have been cool to see her develop her perspective, because it felt like she always had that perspective. And you could argue that that kind of oppression that she was left in and had to work in would naturally lead to that strong of a reversal. Of course, that's possible. All I'm saying is a visual representation of that would have been a lot more effective at evoking the emotion and the theme of the story a little bit. Like, class has been a huge issue in volumes 7 and 8. The mantle atlas distinction and the fact that one is on the ground and one is in the sky is a great visual metaphor for classism and class differences and equality and inequality, blah, blah, blah. Showing that in this context, the Cinder context, and allowing her to see that contrast in a visual way and let the audience experience that with her, I think would have strengthened that class connection. And that's why I think that the Cinder backstory ranges from kinda to incredibly lame. Now let's talk about the actual plot of the episode. And boy, is there plot. Okay, I'm going to talk about the plots of episodes 6 and 7 at the same time now, because they both lead into each other really cleanly, so I don't feel like I need to, just split it up arbitrarily. And this is going to make a good wrap-up for the mid-season finale. We're going to focus on Oscar and Hazel, mostly, and we're going to focus on the invasion and Atlas, obviously. So Oscar and Hazel. This Oscar and Hazel subplot, whatever you want to call it, this torture foreplay session for their inevitable reconciliation really worked for me, actually. I was going to start complaining about it just on instinct, but it's actually good. I actually enjoyed it a lot. And the reason I enjoyed it is because I like this idea of the infiltration psychologically of Oscar and Ozpin, like trying to break him down from the inside. It's kind of fitting for a man who, or two men, and individuals who, their whole premise is two becoming one. Like, them being able to do the reverse is really cool, for a reason that I have yet to be able to explain. Let me try, though. I'll try. Ozpin is supposed to be somebody who can, who has, this infinite wisdom, this, millennia backwards, lived through every life possible, been, I guess, one gender the whole time somehow. So it makes sense that he would come up with an idea like, infiltrating from the inside and like understanding that breaking down the cohesion of a group is the easiest way to destroy it, because that's what happened to him, a la Lionheart. What is amusing is that Oscar, a one-time 14-year-old, is able to do the same thing. Osmond's relationship with wisdom is really weird for this reason, and I'll get into this more when I do my inevitable Volume 8 full whole thing review. But, just to touch on the subject a little bit, Osmond is how many thousands of years old? And he came up with his idea, and then a 15-year-old came up with the exact same idea, and he was like, yeah, we're vibing. This is what I wanted, like, for us to like connect like this, Oscar. We're like the exact same person, even though I've lived a life like yours 10,000 times over, and somehow I'm like, me and this 14-year-old, I think we got something going. Moving on though, Hazel's motivation now makes a lot more sense to me, because it's clear that Salem is manipulating him to be where he is. Like, there's no actual trust between them, and he's only blinded by his rage to get revenge for his sister, and Salem makes him feel like, one, that he needs it, and two, the only way to get it is through her, and three, that she's an inevitable force of nature. I'm not sure, like, where they're going to take this plot point, or how Hazel is going to turn, if he's going to turn on Salem, but it seems like everybody besides Watts and Tyrion in Hazel's group, in Cinder's group, is going to have some reason to not want to be on her side anymore. Mercury is weird because he's just taking orders, I guess. Like, I can't really know. He's just being a fuckboy who loves his mother, which is cute. And he's actually dumb enough to believe that she's gonna create a new world, and he has no evidence to even think that she would actually do that. Salem's two abilities that she's best at are famously destruction of the existing world and terraforming. So I guess it'll work out if those are her abilities, and what is she going to use them for? I also find it amusing how Hazel works for a Dark Queen, Mistress of Grimm, who wants to take over the world, but he finds the story of the two brothers implausible. He's like, quiet boy, that's a fairy tale. Now, let me go talk to my winged, tentacle-producing, giant grim whale-owning master. I love how, like, in anime, the people in the anime don't believe that anime's anime. In this show, they wouldn't believe in the girl in the tower or the two brothers or, whatever fairy tales they have, the golden hamster. I don't know what they have. Or in One Piece, how most people didn't believe in the devil fruits until, like, way later in the story, even though it's only slightly more anime than the world they already live in. But jumping off from the point of something being extremely anime, whatever Salem's doing at the end of this episode 6, going into episode 7, is very anime. And it's anime because I don't know what metric she's using to determine now that it's time. Like, look, this is what she says directly at the end of, episode 6.
It's time.
Why is the time now? I really want to know. This is probably going to come up later, but I don't understand. Like, there are so many things she could have done before this point to wrap up this season quicker, for her, I guess. If Salem was writing this story and not Miles and Carrie, she could have just, shot some magic at the bottom of Atlas, which goes weirdly unprotected for some reason. And she could have just destroyed it herself. But instead, she has to launch her circus animal assault on the city by using centipedes to destroy the shield towers or whatever. The Hound could honestly solve a lot of these problems that she's having, because it could have done all that destruction itself and probably nobody would have killed it. This is why the repeated use of the idea of time in the episode doesn't really make sense to me. Like, they say, like, it's time, and, what else? What time is it? They didn't say that. You're too late. Things like that. Like, it doesn't... I want to see somebody, please tell me if you see this connection, because I don't. But the only area where I see time connecting is midnight in Cinderella. So episode 6 caps off on a weird note for me. Good because, like, the conflict is actually happening and we get to see, all the character moments are going to come out of like Salem invading Atlas. But on the other end, I'll never understand why Atlas has shields only on its top side. Like, you can't just put on a bra, you need panties too. Like, finish the outfit. Ironwood was so worried about, like, we need to protect Atlas over Mantle when he could have just given his city pants, energy pants, and it would have been fine. That centipede strategy would not have worked if there was just a bottom side shield on Atlas. I'm going to let it go for now, but I really want to know whether or not Ironwood wears underwear because there seems to be, like, some missing logic in terms of having defense only on one side of a thing. My hopes are high for when Salem finds the Atlas vault, when she finds the backup maiden under the doormat. Anyways, let's talk about episode 7 because it gets fucking crazy. Oh, I should bleep that out. I'm too lazy to bleep that out in post. It gets crazy. A quick summary of episode 7 before we get into the meat of it. Hazel tortures Oscar physically, and Oscar tortures Hazel mentally. Whitley proves that it was a good idea not to give him up for adoption. Ren finally comes out of the Matrix, and Penny breaks the world record for fastest food delivery person.
I'm pizza time.
In this review, we're just going to talk about Ren and May Marigold for the most part, or that conversation at least, because I just want to focus on more character stuff this time, and then we'll briefly get into predictions for what's going to happen after the season comes back. So first, May Marigold and that whole conversation. My major takeaway from this conversation is 1, May Marigold is one of the best Happy Huntresses and one of the best new characters from Volume 7 and 8. And 2, RWBY is one of the worst characters in Volume 7 and 8 of RWBY. Now, my opinion on RWBY might be surprising if you are coming here straight from having just seen the Red trailer, but if you watch the subsequent 8 volumes of content, you might learn to agree with me. The conversation between Blake, Weiss, and May is so interesting and nuanced and compelling and situationally, interesting because they all occupy different positions in society, so to speak. They have to navigate what could be considered morally right or wrong given their positions. Like, Weiss is trying to protect the people that she thinks she needs to protect, which includes kind of, everybody. And so that's why she feels the need to, protect Mantle and Atlas, but specifically Atlas because they're there right now. May wants to protect Mantle because she feels like she's been abandoned by Atlas, and she was abandoned by Atlas and her family, who is also a high-class family like Weiss's, and Blake is a faunus who, like May Marigold, is oppressed, is a marginalized member of society who's had to contend with the Shnees specifically, or just high-class people in general. And all 3 of these women have had to deal with, people not wanting them to be who they are, essentially, and not letting them do what they want and trying to control them. And then they went off and, fucking did their own thing, right? And then now, in all of their individual choices to do their own thing, they come up against each other in this question of okay, we all did our own thing, or we were all trying to do our own thing, but now there's something bigger on the line. There's the whole city of Atlas is on the line, and Mantle's on the line. So how do we contend with our relationships with these conflicting forces while trying to do the right thing? It's a complex game of mental and moral tennis that encompasses a lot of interesting aspects of marginalized groups and sociology and philosophy and all that. And then RWBY comes in with her hot cocoa and moral uppity, and she's like, no, we have to work together, blah blah blah, anime, blah blah blah, friendship, blah blah blah, will not get through this without each other, and friendship and hugs. It ruins the gravity of that conversation, of them talking about damn, this woman is, this is a trans woman who felt rejected in her identity from her family and all that. And Weiss felt, a similar way for different reasons because, she wanted to go out, travel the world, go to Beacon, etc., and, not necessarily be a part of the Schnee Dust Company. And, Blake had her own disagreements with the White Fang and wanted to move in a new direction, all that. And then amidst all of that, RWBY just has the most asinine, useless take about friendship and being together. And that's supposed to be inspiring. I really hope the show isn't going for that. I know the theme of the volume is unity, and of course that makes, or one of the themes of the volume is unity and distrust and all that. But like the central concept of the show is people need to unite to work together in order to solve problems. And RWBY is supposed to embody that claim, I guess, but has none of the charisma or argumentative prowess to back any of that up. RWBY's like substance as a character ends at, like the opening of the show. Like RWBY is to anime what the opening of an anime is to an anime. That is to say, the shell of the thing and like a symbol of what the thing is supposed to be without actually being it. Now, to be fair, at the end of the conversation, May asks her like, so how do we do that? How do we do the whole united thing and the together thing? And RWBY doesn't give an answer, which is good because I don't think that there is an answer, at least for now, which is why I think she probably shouldn't say anything about that and just try to work out the problem as it is, as opposed to like parroting some shit you'd hear in like fairy tale fan fiction. I know I've been complaining about this all volume, but it just goes to show like either RWBY's gonna have an amazing character arc where she figures out how to be a real leader and she grows past all this stuff and it turns out she was wrong and she stops making speeches and starts actually talking to people. If that happened, that would be great, and I will take back all of this criticism as setup for an inevitable or an eventual good character moment or arc or finale. But I can't stand how she just ruins every deep conversation that she's in. It just kills the whatever deep vibe is in the show already, if there is any, or like whatever meaningful shit is going on in the show. She just kills all of it. I really hope they do more with her character, because if they don't, you could just plug in any speech from RWBY at any point post volume 3 into any other conversation and it would still make sense. That's how often she makes the same points. So if they keep doing the same shit over and over again, I think I'm just going to start fast forwarding through her dialogue and then filling it in like afterwards, like, oh, is that what she actually said? Well, looks like I was still right. Now, moving on, let's talk about Ren, a character that actually has a good moment in this episode. Ren verbally admitting that he cares about Oscar and he actually isn't like an emotionless creature shell is really important for him and really important for his character progression and eventually his relationship with Nora in the long run. So I'm glad that they picked this moment to finally like put it out there that he feels stuff. Not that they didn't show that before, but like really finally put out there like what he actually thinks. And him putting everybody on blast in this episode was the greatest thing that happened in this season, possibly. Because I've not liked the Aesops for this entire volume, and I wish somebody would just tell them off already. And then Ren told them off in possibly the most responsible way, which instead of being like, hey, fuck you, people in my life have died too, and you don't see me talking about how like I try to replace them like they're car parts. Instead, he said, here's what's wrong with you and here's why you're being like that. And of course they couldn't handle it because it was the truth. Ren did a last day on the job, I quit, go fuck yourself moment in this episode, which was, that fact of it was the best part. That he was like, here's what your problem is, and you're a liar and a fraud. And he didn't say go fuck yourself, but I'll add it myself. Another cool aspect of Ren's semblance evolving in the way that it has is that it implies something about how semblances evolve in the first place, because it seems like, based off of this, that semblances can evolve under like emotional pressure. That's a great mechanism for creating character moments while working on the power scaling and the combat system of the show. I think that's a great idea for that. It's like the same thing as Super Saiyan fundamentally, but that's why Super Saiyan was a good idea to begin with. A lot of stories have that mechanism where emotional distress creates some kind of new power for the combat system, which is, I think, good for having the characters connect more with the power scaling and the combat of a given series. Like in One Piece, you have Haki. Extreme stress is required to make Haki become better. In Dragon Ball, you have Super Saiyan up until you really don't, because Super Saiyan Blue comes out of where? There's no emotional thing that makes it happen. Same for Super Saiyan God. It's just kind of like, I'm a god now, which is the most Kanye transformation possible. RWBY didn't really explicitly have this element to its story before this point. I mean, there was Jean with unlocking his semblance to heal Weiss or whatever, but, or really, honestly, when RWBY used her silver eyes, I guess. I mean, that's a little more Super Saiyan / Nine-Tailed Fox-like, but lamer. I hope that this development can revitalize the combat in RWBY by adding new abilities to each character that deal with their semblance and therefore their character. I think the fights would be made a lot more compelling by making them a little closer to character arcs in the story, because I don't think that they have been as much, or in general they haven't been, and now they're starting to go down that route a little more. I'll get into this more in my full volume review at the end of whenever volume 8 ends, when the planet restarts its new cycle after it's burnt to the ground. And now to wrap up, let's talk about what might happen upon the season's return. Now, the general direction of Volume 8 has been things getting worse because people don't trust each other and nobody's uniting and everybody's trying to do their own thing for their own goals and essentially just being selfish and not uniting. That's, if you have to boil it down to one sentence, that's what it would be. The primary strategic tactic at this point in the volume that's being used by both sides is sowing discord among the opposing sides, players. Penny getting hacked and possibly being controlled by Watts being used by Ironwood to control Penny in the first place, Oscar trying to convince Hazel that he doesn't actually belong on Salem's side, and within the groups, Yang and RWBY having their disagreement that splits off the main group into two separate factions, and May Marigold trying to get Weiss and RWBY and Blake to choose between Atlas and Mantle, which is the broader choice in general that everybody on the quote-unquote good guys side have to make. Based off of that general pattern in the volume, a thematically consistent way for the volume to continue would be if, let's say, Zwei convinced the Hound to stop being Salem's lapdog. Zwei could show the Hound that there's more to being a dog than kidnapping kids by beating the shit out of them and then growing wings. Not all dogs do that, and I don't think the Hound knows that yet. That does it for this review. I know that was an abrupt end, but I just like that idea of Zwei being the one that changes the whole plot by convincing the Hound with, dog camaraderie to change his whole life. That, and this video came out real late, but what are you gonna do? I might do a theories for the second half of Volume 8 video, depending on how many ideas I can come up with for stupid theories. Other than that, though, I'm gonna not do any RWBY content until the second half of the season comes out. So thanks for watching.